Hello and welcome to the Best Kept Secrets of Greene County, New York podcast, where we're letting the Catskills out of the bag. I am your host, Thomas Boomhower, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, the creative lead for Buy in Greene and Invest Greene programs, the #1 Greene County knower. It's Mark Gustavson.
Hey, Thomas.
Hello. How are you, Mark?
Oh, we're doing as good as we possibly can. As my dad says, used to say, I'm on the right side of the grass, so it's all good.
That's all you can do. Today's episode, it's a little extra special, I would say, because it's our 10th episode, so that's pretty cool. And for me, I grew up literally right up the street, right here on 2nd Street in the beautiful village of Athens, as we are excited to be joined today by Johnny Osborne, the owner and operator of Night School, the home of deep fried beers. Johnny, thanks for taking the time to sit and chat with Mark and I. We're very, very excited to learn and share with our listeners about this fantastic business of yours.
Same here, fellas. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all about what we got going on out here.
That's fantastic. So, the building that we're in right now used to be the original home of Crossroads, and that became quite a destination 10 years ago as well. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you came to come into this space and what your whole concept of night school is all about.
Yeah, so there's definitely a Crossroads connection to how I ended up here. The name of our business, at least how it's listed on Google, Night School Home of Deep Fried Beers, is excessively long because we have two brands that we're operating in parallel. One of which is Deep Fried Beers that I started a bit over three or 4 years ago, depending on when you want to count it. Operating that business, it was kind of like a ghost kitchen for beer. I was making it at a brewery that a friend was running and managing, and that was in Queens, down in the city, and got that rolling and had about a year of lead time. And they had opened their brewery. This brewery had just opened where I was making my beer, and it was COVID times. And so things were significantly slower than expected when they purchased all of their infrastructure. But they were, they were making good beer, and business started to pick up, and, got to that point where it stopped being like I could call them whenever and be like, hey, can I brew a beer? They'd be like, sure, fine. To be like, hey, let's start scheduling that out. Like, do like virtually in advance. Because I was like, all right, yeah, these tanks are pretty full. So kind of reading the room, I started looking for other places where I could make beer. And I wasn't getting a ton of traction down in the city. I was being very particular about it. I was using other people's equipment. Normally when that's done, you would basically supply recipe and process information to a host facility, and they would produce it for you. And the sorts of beers that I make for that portfolio are very much have process points that are outside of standard. And I kind of was only negotiating deals where I could actually sign a waiver or whatever for liability purposes and brew it myself though. And so there weren't that many places that were really comfortable with that dynamic. The first brewery, actually, the guy that ran it was someone who had been a supervisor of mine at a previous one. Now, he would kind of vouch for me. He was like, he's not that much of an idiot. And so I couldn't really find another place in the city to keep going. I just was using industry forums and the various ways you find jobs in beer, looking for other things. And I saw that Crossroads had posted an ad for a head brewer. And I was familiar with Crossroads because they were doing contract production already, and their largest customer at the time, at least, was Return Brewing over in Hudson, which is a brewery that was founded by some of the fellows that I used to work with, actually.
Right, and now they have taken over the former Crossroads space in Catskill.
They have, yeah. And so talked to the folks at Crossroads, talked to my buddies at Return about me taking that job, and since they had extra capacity, I was like, look, I'll be a customer too. So I'm taking some of your money, but I'm giving you some money. And that deal kind of worked out for everybody, so I could keep my brain going. It wasn't so far away from the city that I couldn't still serve my accounts down in the 5 boroughs and start building up some new ones up here. And I was running Crossroads for I think a little shy of a couple of years before they closed that facility down. But towards the end of that run, they had closed this facility. Ultimately, when they didn't find a buyer for it, I had thrown out the idea when it sort of started to look like they were going to close down the big one that I was running. And I was like, do you have any interest in renting it out to me? It's like a turnkey facility. And they were just like, I don't think you get the money to do that. But maybe if you wanted to try that with the old brew pub. And so that's how it happened. Is
very cool.
Yeah, I just was in the right place at the right time. And I kind of knew I was probably quite a few years out from being able to put together a fundraise and get together the kind of money I would need to get into a brewing production facility organically. This opportunity. I was like, I'm never going to get the chance to get into a place for cheaper. And I was like, let's give it a go. You know?
So what is your capacity here in the old brew pub? I mean,
So in this brew pub, as it's currently kitted out, they actually used to have like the capacity here used to be about 50% more than what it currently is.
Okay.
And it can do more than what it has on site right now, but it's currently kitted out to do, it has 4 7-barrel fermentation tanks.
Okay.
That is probably your biggest bottleneck production wise. I would venture to say, like, as it's currently kitted out, after you lose some beer during production, we're probably talking about like 400 potentially barrels is the unit we often use in beer. 400 barrels of beer in production. Like cases of 16-ounce cans, it's like 4,000.
Okay.
It's basically
Okay.
10x there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what's the range of deep fried beers? I mean, what can I expect when I look at the menu?
Yeah. So that's part of why we've got night school as an identity too. The business model for deep fried beers was very, very much a narrow one as a byproduct of how the business started. The deal that I had with the facility where I was producing down in Queens was, yeah, man, you can make the beer here, but like we don't have a ton of extra storage space. Like we can give you like 1 pallet worth of room in our cold box. When you make this stuff, you got to find a home for everything other than the 1 pallet worth of storage within like a week. And so we were generally making what was about 4 pallets worth of beer. So I had to move that product fast, and I couldn't like maintain inventory of a brand. So if I got like a tap line at a bar, 2-3 weeks later, I didn't have that beer anymore. So it was one where I was targeting accounts where it was just be like, oh yeah, like give me 1 of something and I'll move on to the next thing next time. Maybe every month or 2 months they would want to pick up one of my beers, and that's all I had in. So that worked out well. And that said, the sorts of products that bars that function that way are looking for tend to be more exciting, eccentric products, like things that are going to catch their customers' eyes, new and flashy. So deep fried beers was always a portfolio of like very high alcohol content, very high flavor beers. That's sort of where the name came from. It sort of felt like everything I was making in that portfolio was big and exciting and decadent, maybe a little excessive and over the top, but like it was fun stuff. And deep fried food sort of felt like a little bit of corollary there.
That makes sense.
But that said, bar, restaurant, I kind of knew. I only got to observe Crossroads Brew Pub operating the way it did in the town for a very limited window of time. The overlap between when this place was still open and me being up here, and my job wasn't based out of here, was pretty limited. If I was here a half dozen times before it closed, I'd be surprised. But the impression that I had was that it was very much like this is the community watering hole.
Right.
In getting into this, it's small enough town that like I got to know a lot of key like town stakeholders very quickly. Mayor Sarago used to bartend at Crossroads, and so got to learn a lot of history from a lot of people really fast, and that was the role this building kind of has, and it's kind of great for that. It's probably the biggest uninterrupted room in the town, and it's fairly centrally located. It's walkable for a ton of people, and that's what this space had done. Hanging out in Athens a little bit. I'd been based out of Catskill and based out of Hudson, so I knew those towns a little bit better prior to coming out here, but spent a little time. I was like, oh yeah, like Stewart House and Seconds and Stella's are all spots that like close up a little bit early, and so it's like if you want to come and hang out at night, like it's like this was the place to do it. So we gotta bring that back.
Gotcha.
If all the beers are 8%, it's not an easy place to sit around and have 2 or 3, more than maybe 1 or 2 beers and hang out all night. So like, okay, we need a normal brew pub portfolio. We need more typical strength beers, and I felt that changing what deep fried was just going to like confuse all the existing customers, and I was like, let's just new brand.
So Night School is its own brand of of beer.
It's its own brand. We've actually, the only reason that we don't have like packaged Night School products so far is just because I'll preface this by saying, of all the governmental bureaucracy hoops I've jumped through, possibly the most reasonable one, because I have school in the name of the business, and it is not an accredited academic institution. I had to change my corporate documents to say like, I will never sell anybody education. I'll never act as if I am an authority and take people's money, and just formally declare that to the state. You do a petition. It's like $20. It's so reasonable, but it just takes them a while because that's like nobody's job. It doesn't come up that much. And so I think we're actually like right on the cusp of having it. But operating in this space using night school before the DBA is approved is fine. Like the state doesn't really mind as long as it's done before your license is issued.
Right.
But putting packaged product with that name on it would have been, that's gray area. So I just played it safe for a little while. Cool. But we should start having night school packaged products available here within a month, and I'm hoping within 2 months starting to be distributed around town, and there'll be night school beers on tap at your local bar, and night school cans maybe up at Beer World or something like that. Yeah,
That'd be pretty cool. What's the inspiration behind the name Night School?
honestly, it's really not that. Like I have a notes app that I've kept since like 2014 that I have a rule. It's just like I only add to it when I've been drinking, and it's all my best and worst dumb ideas for beer names and bars and brewery concepts. I pulled deep fried beers from that same list. Most of the good ones had been taken in the 8 years since I had started, but I was like, oh, okay, that was not too bad. That's still available. And yeah, Night School is like the name of a bar. I want to say that I had been in some other bar that had like a really silly name. That was like the Library, and I was like, oh yeah, this is like a funny naming convention here. And then I had the first brewery that I worked at, I was rocking their sweater when I walked in today. Monday Night Brewing had a couple of events. They were not like a school themed institution in any way, but they had started doing like adult prom as an event series.
Interesting.
And it's like a thing. I don't know that they invented it or anything, but it was just my first reference point for it. And of all the events that they started doing out there, outside of their like anniversary event that anyone would get excited for, like prom was the one people were most interested in. And I was like, you know what? Like it's pretty good vibes. Like you're getting a bunch of people dressed out there when they're throwing out their like crappy rental tux and like a gaudy dress, and then it's a good time. I was like, that's like a school thing, gives you a lot of fun runway for things that you can do. And it just felt like a fun concept that you could riff on. I feel like a lot of my favorite bars like have a bit that they're doing, and yeah, that was most of it. There could be this whole side of like, educating you about stuff, but legally with the state, I said now that I would never do that. You're like, you can do brewery tours? I'm like, I'm not sure I can. I've only got this. At this point, that is Night School, yeah.
Oh, wow. So the craft brewing community in Greene County has been just steadily getting stronger and stronger and stronger. When I first moved back here in 2015 after a 35-year hiatus, right, there were a few. There was Rip Van Winkle, there was Crossroads, there was Hammos up in Hensonville. But now we've got real amazing facilities that are around. Old Factory up in Carroll, for instance. They've got a production facility that's absolutely incredible, So how do you find being a part of the beer community in Greene County? You guys support each other, or is there a sense of playful competition, or?
Yeah, I think that there's an aspect of small brewing that is across the board kind of evolving in that sense. In my interactions with other people in Greene County about brewing, it's been nothing but good vibes.
Oh.
I honestly haven't met that many of the other folks in the space. I think relative to my internal expectation for like knowing people, I felt like when I was down in the city, I was most of the time working for other people and having more like reasonable 40 to 50 hour schedules, that I would get very involved in like the local guild and participating and getting to know my peers. Since moving up here, I've been running around like a madman for like 2.5 years straight. And like, if you weren't right in front of me, I didn't meet the guys at Subversive. I met them like at Goodies.
Right.
I'm kidding. It's one of those where, but that's it. Folks that I've gotten to know a little bit. I guess now there is the connection with my return boys who I used to work with down in the city at 6 Point, are now over here in Greene County.
Yep.
We've got a great relationship, and I think you kind of always have your like kind of peer network where you share information and potentially, if you're close enough, even resources.
Sure.
There are certain pieces of like equipment that a brewery would want to have and really doesn't need to use that often, and you'll often see like equipment lending between the brewers where it's just like, hey, you can use this thing of mine if I can use that thing of yours.
Very cool.
We only need it once a quarter anyway. And so definitely stuff like that going on. But of the fellas that I've met, everybody's been friendly and been really kind. Andre over at La Hoff, he's a fun dude. And I met some of the folks affiliated with Grey Willow.
Grey Willow just opened, right?
Yep.
As a matter of fact, they're long-term county residents.
Yeah, because they're part of the team is affiliated with with like Reds and
Right,
a few
they
other
were
restaurants
own
in the
Reds
area.
for years.
Yeah, and
Kanopkas.
terrible. I remember Joe, and I'm blanking on his wife's name.
Kate.
Kate, yeah. They've definitely come through and grabbed pizza before a few times. And some of the fellows that are handling the like production side of the operation out there, Chris, I know him and his girl, they hosted trivia out here at one point, and Chris I know has been a very active home brewer that's gotten a lot of acclaim in the area and now kind of like going pro with it. So he talked about that. I told him he had to bring some of his beer over at some point, but he never did. Yeah.
I had my first pint of Grey Willow Hefeweizen.
Oh, nice.
It was absolutely delicious last Saturday, and I tell you, the food there is phenomenal as well. So it's a really nice addition because it's in Earlton, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And back in the day, 40 years ago, when I was playing in bands and stuff, we used to play there, and it was a dank.
I want to say I heard it was a biker board before.
It was kind of. It had a softball field, and then they just did this total reno on it. And It's absolutely amazing.
Nice.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah. So there's definitely cool stuff. Like I think what the guys in Subversive are doing is always like insane. The malting your own grain.
Oh yeah. Well, that was their big deal.
Yeah.
That was their business model when they were in school together, and so they won a competition that gave them their startup funding, and then they were malting across the river for a while. Then they came down and had the beer cave or the beer cafe on Main Street, and then got the Subversive space open, and have been just going great guns ever since.
Yeah. It's so impressive. I think it's one of those things where I have to imagine that it's kind of hard as a business owner to convey the significance of what that is and how inordinately complicated and difficult it is. Like when I first heard that, like, they're malting all of their own grain, knowing what I know about that process, there's like really not that much overlap between the skills of a brewer and the skills of a maltster. Most of the most successful malting companies in North America are like either extensions of massive conglomerates or family-owned operations that have existed for like 7 years. Like my favorite go-to malt house in the U.S. is a place called Brews, and like it's a major operation. But the way malting works, there's like 30 people that work there, and like half of them are named Brews.
Oh my gosh!
And it's wild. It's a process that happens very dynamically, and it's not quantitative really. It's you'll see a guy having an entire football field worth of grain cooking on the floor, and he's just like running his hand through it, picking it up and smelling it, and telling an operator to like crank the temp up or down to get it going. And it's very much a field that's dominated by people that have passed down that knowledge for generations to be able to do it well. I feel like I'm pretty picky about my materials, and I've got favorites, what I want to work with, and the idea of trying to like recreate that work product for myself, I would never. Right. And the first few times, once I found out about their model, like the first few times I went over there was a part of me that was just like waiting for one of them to be bad, to be honest. Because it's like, how is it not? Yeah. All your raw material, you made your raw materials yourself, and you brewed them well too. Like, how could you? And then every time I had the beer, like, it's good.
That is it.
They did it again.
Right. I was Zane and Max. Zane is more the malting guy, and Max I think is more the brewing guy, or it's the other way around. They kind of share. One of them's stronger in one area than the other, but they're just awarded the Greene County Multi Grant. As part of the Micro Enterprise Assistance Program that Greene County does. And they use that for a silo transfer system that actually moves the grain through the process.
Yeah, those are really like helpful as well. Like as you're starting to scale up, getting better prices on the malt and everything. Like if you can get ship more stuff. It's good to know that they're building it up.
Yeah, we were definitely happy that when they applied, and happy to support them. They're one of the model businesses in the county.
Yeah, it's a really unique business. It's super cool.
Yeah, and they're cool too. One of the things, Mark, when you asked about what your relationship has been with other brewers in the county, it seems like beer people just love beer and they love making beer. No one's really sniping each other. It's always gassing each other up and lifting each other up, which is really cool.
Yeah, I do think that it's also a field where like I feel like as I'm getting to understand like restaurants as a corollary, I'm thinking that there's not nearly that same dynamic in like the food world. I think people appreciate what other folks are doing, but it also seems like a space where your ability to kind of to some degree like phone it in and outsource like a lot of what you actually provide to a customer into purchasing pre-made product versus like building product from scratch and the degrees there, in that it seems like that's like kind of a way that like internally maybe like the food folks that have been to know, it's like, yeah, it's like, is this a place that's like making their stuff, or is this a place that's like heating up stuff?
Yeah. Well,
that's where do they fall on that scale?
And the people that are making the stuff are the ones that are the real destinations, that are around here. That's from...
You usually need some or a lot of that. So
you're just down the street from Salad Seconds, and his scalloped potatoes are legendary. Right? I mean, my wife and I are having Thanksgiving dinner, and Julia's local, and Henning, who is just an amazing chef up there. It's everything is from scratch. Everything's organic. Gracie's in Catskill, right, in Leeds. They make their own ketchup. There's nothing, everything is done. That's really where some of the signature places are. But I totally get what you're saying about some other places that are like, how much industrial stuff can we get in here and kind of phone it in?
Yeah, well, and I think as the parallel, and I mean, not to take anything away from people that are successful with that business model, like you still have to be really savvy to do things that way. But I don't think there's like a corollary to that kind of distinction in beer all that much.
Right.
Like anybody, the only thing that you can really do that makes it easier to make beer and makes it less you being involved is you can get a system that is more expensive and more automated. But most breweries, even if you've got a fairly automated brew house, like you have to have really big scale to justify stuff that really, really makes your day easy.
Right.
And usually that means you grinded through the hard part to get to the point where you can justify that system. And so I think people have a real appreciation for the fact that it's like, we're all doing like very similar types of labor. Like what goes into making what we do is pretty comparable from place to place. And there is absolutely that component of the thing that I always have is like I feel like my extended family like always forgets every time I come back for a gathering that it's like, I just like beer. Like that, like, oh, you're drinking a Miller Lite? I'm surprised to see that. I was like, well, the Miller Lite was in the cooler. It's not a bad beer. We're not like beers. Like, so, yeah. And I think that's the way it is for pretty much everybody. Like it, but you do have some people that'll give you that kind of like stereotype of like a wine song, like pretentious dynamic going on. Most people that are making the most expensive beer you're going to find are also people that can enjoy the cheapest beer around.
So Johnny, where are you from originally?
I grew up in northwestern Mississippi. My town's called Hernando.
Okay.
It exists. There's no tragic ghost town pass or something. And yeah, that's where I grew up. Both sides of my family are actually from the Northeast originally. I claim Hernando because my family moved there when I was like 3. So that's where I was raised. But my dad's side was like greater New York City area based, like mostly in Jersey. And then my mom's side is kind of like greater Philly based. But yeah, ended up moving down there when I was a little kid, raised me there, didn't leave the area until I was already in college. And yeah, so that's where I came up. And
where'd you go to school?
I went to college at Carleton College in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have definitely kind of bounced around a little bit, and
got a lot of Gustavsons out there.
Sorry,
got a lot of Gustavsons out there. That's my last name.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, that was an interesting place to be. Yeah, the Minnesota Nice was a bit of a culture shock.
It is.
They were. I'm from the hospitality state, and what I didn't realize about Minnesota Nice is that's basically coded language for like, don't talk to me.
It's like Lesser Cart in the South.
Yeah. It's very much like everyone is very polite, but the assumption is if I don't know you, we're not interacting. And so yeah, I realized that doing things very early on in my college time was like going and like sitting at a table at the beginning of freshman year with people that I didn't know. Because in my mind, I'm like, nobody knows anybody. We've been here for like 3 days. That was like, whoa, you don't live on my floor, buddy. Like, why are you talking to me? So that was a bit of a culture shock, but I met a lot of good people out there. It was a good school to go to, a good experience overall. Way too cold, had to get out of there. This is the coldest place I've lived since then, and I'm like, I can hit.
My dad always used to say he was born in New York City in Brooklyn, and came up on the day boat in like 26, 27, and to his dad ran a farm up in Carroll. And he always used to say, the mountains protect us down here in the valley. Because, I mean, if you're on the mountain towns, you're getting a lot of that westerly wind that's coming through. But in here in the valley towns, along the river, unless we get a nor'easter coming up the river, it's a lot milder than it is, say, in Wyndham.
Yeah, it's really not that bad. The most challenging part about this storefront is simply how much sidewalk I'm responsible for. Though.
Right.
Like when I was living in cold places, I was like in dorms or shared buildings, and I started getting real good at shoveling snow last winter when we were first getting this place going. I'm just like, oh yeah, it's like like a 90 by 40 storefront. So yeah, we're getting good at shoveling.
Oh, so after college, that's when you started getting involved in brewing, or is it?
Yeah. I had tooled around a little bit with some home brewing, like later on in college and then shortly after. But honestly, it was pretty bad that I was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe not the production side for me. But I was just bartending after school. I graduated like fairly early after like the recession hit, and the job market wasn't friendly, and I had gotten a liberal arts degree, and so it's like, I don't want to go to grad school right now. So I was just bartending and ended up learning even more about beer and spirits and wine and doing that, and ended up moving I went down to Texas right after school, spent about a bit over a year there, and then ended up moving to Atlanta for a few years. And when I moved to Atlanta, I was with a girl at the time. We were moving because of her, and so I didn't have a good gig lined up yet. And applied for a few jobs at a few breweries, and ended up getting a sales gig at that brewery Monday night that I was talking about earlier. And kind of just all went from there. A few years later, with that same girl, she moved to Atlanta to go to law school. Got a gig as a lawyer up in New York, and relocated again. And at that point, I had sort of shifted over to operations bordering on production work. I was back in the brewery doing more like entry level type stuff to help out while my principal duties were actually on like operations and warehousing side. Right. And at that point, I tried getting into production in the city, and the best offer that I got was for like $2,000 more than I'd been making in Atlanta. I was like, guys, I was broken, man. I can't live on this out here.
Absolutely.
So I took a job with a distributor that paid a wage that I could get by on. Okay. Went to brewing school. While I did that, primarily like online. And after I finished that program, got a gig at 6 Point Brewing down in Brooklyn, and really kind of cut my teeth there. Then got the opportunity to build the sort of like initial product portfolio, sales, distribution setup, and production facility for a brand called Talea Beer Company.
Gotcha.
Down in Williamsburg. And once that project got wrapped up, I wanted to definitely see it out through the build out, but it just gotten to a point where I was like, all right, like I've learned a lot about this stuff. I think I'm ready to kind of branch out on my own. So once we got that place like running, that's when I launched Deep Fried Beers.
There you go. So the transition of focusing on brewing and to running an actual facility, restaurant, brew pub, meeting place, watering hole, gathering place, what are some of the challenges that you faced in making that transition?
I think it's just the nature of starting a business the way I did, which is the whole venture has been pretty off the cuff. It was one of those things where getting into this place, it was like I knew if I didn't act soon, something else was going to happen, and so just kind of jumped into it and doing what we're doing. So we're truly like a fly by the seat of our pants type setup. And so it's been little things like can't afford to get like a nice refurb oven. So I got something off of Craigslist from a guy. It was already wrapped up by the time I got there, but it's $5,000 and it'd be like dang near 20 to get, one that anybody's going to put their name on. If it takes me $10,000 to fix it, I saved $5,000. Little trials like that, finding ways to make old equipment work in the space, managing in a different context. I've definitely managed in beer, and I think that even though I often managed up age-wise, I knew my stuff in that lane, and that's generally speaking, folks, they can appreciate technical ability within an area, and it's like even if somebody hasn't been around as long as you, if you can tell they got it, then you're cool with learning and taking direction potentially. Right now, I'm running a kitchen for everybody that works in my kitchen knows more about kitchens.
Right.
And so I think I'm lucky that we've hired really great people. I've got Nate Gebhardt, who's a buddy of mine, actually an old roommate down in the city, who runs our front of house, who's a huge resource to be able to lean on, and really has been able to take on so much about making kind of that half of the operation come to fruition and just function on a day-to-day basis. On my side in the kitchen, we've gotten super lucky, and we have like a bunch of really talented people that ended up being interested in what we were doing. I think because we're pursuing and really delivering the best dang slice that we can, the people that are passionate about food gravitated to the idea of working here. The whole team, I think everyone we got on staff had been in kitchens for at least half a dozen years before working here. And we've got some folks that just really know what they're doing and have been a huge resource to me, to the point where it's like we're working collaboratively. I've spent a bit of time working in pizza as like a side arc I've got an idea of what we should be executing.
Right.
But on terms of like making the commercial enterprise set up to do that successfully in repetition and what systems should be put in place to do that, like I was a manager in beer. I was a cook on the food side. So
Right.
I very much am leaning on my team, and they've been great about helping turn that place into a kitchen that runs reasonably smoothly. And so yeah, got real lucky with my people. They're good folks.
How many folks do you have?
I think we got, I guess we've got 8, I want to say. I'm doing the Rain Man math in my head to count to 10. And I believe that's what we've got on the team right now. Yeah, we got 8 folks, not including myself. Yeah, we're probably gonna be in the like 10, 12 ballpark. I'm gonna figure in the next like 3 or so months. We're actually looking to expand our kitchen operations tangibly. We feel really good about what we're doing on the pizza side, but also I think one of the things that Crossroads did well, and that fits with the nature of kind of the role that this space has in the town. Like this is watering hole, this is gathering place, is they offered a lot of different types of food.
Yeah, and comfort food. The comfort food that they did, like, their macaroni and cheese was just out of this world, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we realized from the feedback that we've been getting from folks, outside of the fact that literally everything that we make currently has bread, essentially, other than, hey, could you do some gluten-free stuff for our gluten-free folks, was what we're hearing. It was wings, it was mac and cheese, it was burgers, and those were the things that people wanted to be able to get in. And so we're very actively working on that. We've gotten a flat top installed and got some fryers cleaned up, and we are quite literally, I mean, I don't know how long it'll take to edit these guys. We might be soft launching that by the time this gets aired.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I mean, it'll be in market in a week or so. So
that's it. We're on the race.
We're on the race.
To do this then.
That's good. It'll be timely.
And so it's one where I was just like, I think it's easy when you know less about something to be hesitant to change. And I know a lot about beer, so I feel comfortable of just shooting from the hip and changing what I'm doing all the time. But I truly, in terms of running a kitchen and running a restaurant, and I have imposter syndrome there. I'm more of a novice. And so it's one where very much there's a part of me that was just like, I don't know, guys, like we made this pizza pretty dang good. Like let's just make sure we're making really good pizza for people. And then, we got to a point where it was just like, you know what? Like there's nothing, we haven't messed up making good pizza. Like a few months. Like we got this. We're good. We got good people. They know what we're doing. We're in a good rhythm. And we're still here for everybody at the bar. It's like, man, if you guys have like burgers, sandwiches or something, we'd be here more. Well, that's the point of the place, is like be a place where you want to be more. And that allows me to continue operating the business as well.
So speaking of that, what are the hours of operation here for our listeners?
Oh, so much. We are open. We are operating. We open up at 4 Monday through Thursday. We close at like 10 or 11, kind of depending on the day. We've been seeing if there was kind of like an interest in like coming out and watching sports games. So we operate a little bit later on Monday and Thursday, so people could like stay through like a football game. And then Friday and Saturday are like noon to midnight. Sunday is like till also opening at noon till like 11. So we've been open 7 days a week for a good portion of every day. Latest place open in town every day. And
That's the secret to success right there. You got to be open, and that's fantastic, especially now. Holiday shopping season's coming up. We're encouraging everybody to buy in Greene and do all of that. But also this year, kind of new to the jingle, is don't forget to grab a bite while you're out, because we got great local eateries and watering holes. And so you'll see the Athens stroll going down through here during the holiday seasons.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see it.
Yeah, we're definitely planning on the Victorian stroll, being kind of like a bigger night for us. We're doing one of our first like live music nights that we're doing, where we're working with some of our regulars. It's cool. Like this is a phenomenon that like I haven't really had any place that I've lived before. I mean, it exists in the city. Obviously, when you're in New York, there are talented artists of all kinds, but there's also just so many people that you don't feel like saturated with any particular population. Really good musicians out here.
They're all over. It's pretty awesome.
Really cool.
I mean, you got Lex Gray and the Urban Pioneers, which is fantastic. Who are the folks that wallpapers?
Oh, sorry, Amy and Eve's their band.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. I really want the beer to DJ something. Like, we gotta get Evie out here. That's such a good bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, their music is good. Like I've heard some of their stuff now. I've followed them on Instagram, and yeah, there's a lot of good local groups. But even like we do karaoke out here, it's insane. Like,
my goodness.
there's so many like people that got like serious pipes that are out singing. And yeah, it's wild. It's like real live entertainment for karaoke night.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic sitting here and seeing this come back to life. And,
Yeah.
you know, again, we're at 10:30 in the morning, guys, as we're recording this, because Johnny had told us that if we did it at 1:30 in the afternoon, he'd be up to his elbows in dough. So, and that's pizza dough.
Hey, no, we're making that cash. Just can't even move.
But so definitely, if you are in Athens at any time after 4 on the during the week and afternoon on the weekends, do yourself a favor. Come in, sample some deep fried beer, have some night school brew, and try one of these pizzas. They're fantastic. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, thanks for your time, fellas. I appreciate the chance.
Absolutely. So that's a wrap on another amazing episode of the Best Kept Secrets of Greene County, New York podcast. Thank you again, Johnny, for taking the time to chat with Mark and I. But until then, we have places to go, things to do, and stories to tell.